Hey, what's up guys, and welcome in today's video where I'm gonna break down our new free Latin tech house Ableton template called the Caribe. Here's a quick preview. So, as I mentioned before, this template is actually free for you to download from the link in the description below. So let's start with the ghost kick. So we basically have the same MIDI as the kick, but this one is muted and works only as a trigger for the sidechain. As you can see, we are reducing a bit around the 120 Hz. And this second channel is basically the same kick but filtered for the breakdown. Moving on, we have the bass line. So the preset on this one is called Desert 13 and it's from the Sub-Boom Bass 2. As for the processing, we have an EQ cutting the very low and the top frequencies. We have a bit of compression. At the end we have this other compressor for the sidechain, and the second channel once again is just the same bassline but with a filter on for the breakdown. As you can see, we have a lot of channels here. Let's start with the clap. Yeah, really basic clap, no processing on it. Then we have this open hat. We have a chorus, which is adding a bit more stereo image to the hat. And we have the utility, increasing the width a little bit more. Then we have some loops, starting with this percussion loop. So here we have this adapter drive to the loop. As for the EQ, we are boosting the top frequencies. Then we have this second percussion loop. So here instead we are focusing a bit more on the mid frequencies, as you can see. Frequency shifter, reducing the frequencies by 30 Hz. And then we have some more Latin percussion, for example this conga. Once again here focusing on the mid-range, so we have reduced the frequencies by 150 Hz. At the end the compressor for the sidechain. Then we have a bongo loop. Here the processing is really similar to before, so we have an EQ removing this very loud peak, together with a frequency shifter to reduce the frequency around 50 Hz here. And at the end the sidechain as always. Then we have this top loop, which is really low in the mix and is used to kind of blend all of the sounds together. Then in the second part of the drop we are also introducing some shakers. So as you can see, we did a bit of editing on the sample here, so we have enabled the warp beats mode and we have changed the envelope of the transients, as you can see. Like this, an EQ cutting the very low frequencies. Then there is this autopan to add some more movement. And at the end we have used this split band de-esser, which is basically a preset of the multiband compressor here in Ableton to remove a bit of the harshness. And then we have this clave, once again here no processing. And the last thing for this group is this percussion fill. which is basically the last part of a percussion loop, which you can see here. That's the full loop. As for the processing on the group itself, so we have first of all a filter for automations, then we have this EQ, removing a bit of the mid frequencies and boosting the top. A bit of saturation. And then we are going with some parallel compression. Here we have used the preset from the glue compressor here in Ableton. Yeah, and basically that's all for the drums. Now let's move on into the synth section. So this is the main synth. So this is once again a preset from Ableton and especially from the wavetable, but as you can see we did a bit of editing, especially on the reverb and on the echo. So we have reduced a bit the reverb and increased the echo, and as you can see we also have quite a bit of automations. So the first one is simply a gain automation that we did with is utility, and it's basically to reduce the volume when we are increasing the filter cutoff and the release. And this is just because when you're increasing the release and the filter cutoff, you're also kind of increasing the volume because there are new frequencies coming in. So in order to maintain the same level, I've also did this utility automation. And then we have the classic we have filter automation and the filter cutoff and the release automation. This is how they sound. It's just to add a bit more movement and to make the track a bit less boring. And as for the processing, as you can see, nothing special. We're just removing the low frequencies and we have a compressor for the sidechain. Then we have these strings. Once again, here we have used a wavetable preset in Ableton and we have played a bit with this wave effect, as you can hear. So I didn't like this one a lot, so I've reduced this to around 35. And as for the processing, we have basic EQ, the auto filter for the automation, and then we have a bit of panning to add some movement to the strings. Then the last thing for the synths are these stubs. Here once again we are going with the wavetable, and this is the preset that we have used. For the processing, really simple. Also here just an EQ cutting the low frequencies and a compressor for the sidechain. We haven't changed the preset that much. Maybe we played a bit with the release, which was a bit longer, so we have reduced the release, and I think nothing more. Moving on to the vocals. So as you can see we have two parts. The first one is the actual loop, and then we have the build-up. So as for the processing, we obviously have a filter for the automation, then an EQ reducing here around 6000 Hz to remove some of the harshness.
Sube la marea, baja el sol, la cosa buena que trae tu amor.
Especially the S sounds. Then we have this compressor, which is doing like some basic compression on the vocal. As you can see, we have the ratio at 4, medium attack, and we set the auto release.
Sube la marea, baja el sol, la cosa buena.
Once again, here we have this split band de-esser to remove some of the harshness from the vocal.
Sube la marea, baja el sol, la cosa buena.
So we did all of this processing because this is the dry version of the vocal. If you have this sample pack, you'll also find the wet version, which is already processed. But for this tutorial, I wanted to do a bit of processing myself so that you guys can learn how to correctly process these vocals. Then we have the chorus, which is used to add some stereo image, because the dry version, since it's like it was recorded, it comes in mono, and we want to make it a bit wider. So we have the chorus and the utility, which is increasing the width.
La cosa buena que trae tu amor. Sube la marea, sube la marea.
And then we have the audio effect track for the reverb, and here we've used the basic vocal hall preset in Ableton together with an EQ before to remove the low frequencies before going into the reverb.
Sube la marea, baja el sol, la cosa buena que trae tu amor.
And then we have this echo, which is only used for this dry wet automation here in the breakdown sections, and then that's all for the main vocal. We also have a low layer that we made using the vocoder, and in particular by reducing the formant. So as you can see, we have this part which is basically covering the mid to low frequencies, and the processing is basically the same, and the only thing that changes is that this layer sits really down in the mix, that you can even really hear it, but it makes a lot of difference when played together with the main vox.
Sube la marea, sube la marea, sube la marea, sube la marea.
So yeah, basically we are adding a bit more body to the vocal. And coming down to the effects section, we have this uplifter, the snare roll, really basic downlifter, and then we have this fill that I made by myself for this track, and it's basically made of a reverse hat, a couple of snares, and a perk, and this is how it sounds all together. And that's right before the drop hits. And then we have a couple more effects, another downlifter and another uplifter. Yeah, and basically that's all for the processing of the track. The last thing that we're gonna cover in this tutorial is gonna be the mastering. So obviously the template will come fully mixed and mastered. So as you can see in the mastering, we have a first utility which is boosting the gain, and this is to reach around the -4 to -6 dB of headroom before going into the mastering. Then we have a utility reducing the gain right before the drop. In this way we can increase the energy when the drop hits, and also in the build up we have quite a lot of elements between synths, vocals, effects, so it would be actually louder than the drop part, and we don't want this, because otherwise when the drop hits it will sound a bit less full and punchy. So instead we want to reduce the volume right before the drop hits. We also have this endless mile automation. So as you know, the endless mile is basically a combination of various effects like filter, delay, reverb, and a bit of utility here as well. So we have this automation going on here. The EQ8 doing some mid-side EQ, so for the mids removing everything below 30 Hz, for the sides removing everything below 278 Hz, and boosting a bit of the tops as well. A tiny bit of saturation on the master bus as well. So we have this compressor, and the preset is called Make It Loud. So as you can see, we are doing around 2 to 3 dB of compression on the master bus. And as for the limiter, we are using the color limiter. Yeah, and basically that's all for this tutorial. Don't forget to download this Ableton template from the link in the description below. Let us know what tutorials would you like to see next, and I'll see you soon. Bye!